Hello, everyone, and welcome to CMS Cloud Office Hours. I'm Allison Green, a content strategist on the communications team for the CMS Cloud program. I'm joined by Yulady Merida Gonzalez, the Cloud Communications Manager. It's great to see everyone here, especially those of you who are joining us for the first time. For those of you who are new to this event, we generally hold these office hour sessions weekly on Thursdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're curious, you can check out topics for upcoming sessions by visiting the CMS Cloud Office Hours page on cloud.cms.gov and by subscribing to Gov Delivery. A few notes of housekeeping before we start. Please keep cameras and mics off. Put questions you may have in the chat and we'll address them as we go. And also, a reminder that this session is being recorded. We'll share it out with registered attendees after the event. Today, David De Silva, a CMS product manager, will give us an introduction to some of the new consumption resources available on cloud.cms.gov. As a note, I'd like to remind you to put any questions you have in the chat so we can answer them at the end of the presentation. And now I'll hand it over to David.
Great, thanks, Allison. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for spending a few minutes. It's good to be back at office hours, and I see a lot of familiar faces and names in the participant list, and really excited to kind of share with you some of the new things that some of the new resources we've recently released on cloud.cms.gov. So, to kind of kick things off, effective cloud consumption and cost management is a kind of very critical focus for the agency overall. And this has been a big priority for a long time, and we've made a lot of progress on this area. So, just one data point, for example, in the last 6 months, the use of savings plans has increased from 35% to 75%. It's a big jump, and it's due to a lot of the folks that are, I'm sure on this call, right, making smart choices about your cloud configurations. But I think sometimes we take for granted, right? Like, why is this such a big focus? And so you think about, why is effective cloud consumption such an important focus for us as we get started here? Overall, we think actively managing cloud footprint can do a couple things. One, could help us reduce system complexity within CMS. It can hopefully make the budgeting process easier overall, and it unlocks funds for additional migration and innovation at the CMS level, and also hopefully at the individual sort of application and OU level as well. And so if you think actively managing our cloud footprint is important, right? How do we go about doing that? How do we increase our maturity as an organization in this? And there are really sort of two ways that we think about driving that maturity. The first is around incorporating best practices for cost optimization, directly into the platform. And so this looks like things like, including default configurations, such as cloud rules, enabling the cloud service providers, cost optimization tools, doing architecture reviews, and even sort of conducting in-depth analysis of consumption trends at both the GSS and application level, and incorporating that, using that data to make informed decisions about overall best practices. And that's all sort of happening behind the scenes, right? And isn't something that we won't necessarily want to make application teams aware of. It's all sort of getting baked in directly. The second way we do this, and in some ways is the main focus for today's conversation, which is around how can we help application teams be active stewards of your own cloud consumption, right? How do we help you make good and sound decisions? So we use this term, right? Being an active steward. And this is not to have a laundry list of behaviors of what that means. But if we were to think, like, what are some of the behaviors of being a good steward? What does that mean? So one is assessing your specific application use cases to ensure your cloud resources are appropriate for your specific situation, right? We want to make sure that things are tailored, that things are configured in a way that makes sense for you. Two, it's using some of the tools that CMS has built. CMS Cloud has built itself, like the cost estimation tool, which we've talked a lot about recently. EAC 2.0 dashboard, right? These things are here to help you better estimate and track spending specifically, related to your footprint. And then three, this is not a set it and forget it type activity, right? It's something that actually requires to come back in, periodically review your application's cloud utilization, and see if things are holding or if it needs to change. So, obviously I'm going to transition now into kind of what we've been building on cloud.cms.gov, but I wanted to give that kind of, structure to conversation and why, we think it's worth spending some time, in these calls kind of going through this. So, as I mentioned, we've recently released the Cost Management Center on cloud.cms.gov. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I'm going to take a tour through this new section of the site so you have a better understanding of the information that is available to you. Some of it is new, but a lot of it is also sort of the centralization of a lot of information that was already on cloud.cms.gov. I think as we were going and preparing for this work, one of the challenges that we recognized was that, while we have a lot of that great information, it was scattered through cloud.cms.gov, and also some of the other tools like CET and EAC. And so this is an opportunity to kind of bring it all together. So the first thing I want to do is obviously show you how to get to the Cost Management Center. So if you sign on to cloud.cms.gov using whatever browser you use, the most obvious way will be kind of through this top hero. This is obviously where we promote a number of other things like the cost estimation tool. Hopefully you've seen that. But you can access the Cost Management Center through here, where you manage your cloud spend. The other way you can get here is through the resources section. So down in the operating and CMS cloud section, there's also another card here that will bring you to the Cost Management Center. So both of these things will bring you here. Of course, you could always bookmark this if that's something that you would prefer to do. Okay, so now that we're arrived, let's talk about what the Cost Management Center has for you. And basically, I'm going to walk through the major sections that we've got and touch on sort of the key, essentially value proposition of each. I think why it should matter to you, why you should care. So the first section is around contracting, and this section is here and details information related to the repricing process, basically so that you can be prepared for the upcoming cycle. Obviously, we don't have all the details yet, and that's going to be forthcoming in future communications. But this is, as we head into that process, this content is an opportunity to sort of remind yourself of how the process works. So as I mentioned, stay tuned for an upcoming office hours session on this topic. And if you do have questions about repricing, please actually drop those into the chat here today. That will help us make sure as we form those future communications to make sure we're addressing questions that folks have. So it's here, I'm going to stop for our first poll question. So you lady, I think you're in charge of the poll questions. If you want to bring that up,
Hi, David.
I'll let you introduce that.
Perfect, thank you. I just launched the first poll question for today, and we would like to know, as option year repricing approaches, how knowledgeable are you feeling about the process? Very knowledgeable, somewhat knowledgeable, or not at all?
We'll give folks a little bit of time here to respond to that.
So I can see most attendees has answered the poll already. I will give it another 15 seconds before I end the poll. So here it is, the results. Most folks feel somewhat knowledgeable. Thank you for the answers. So back to you, David.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, dear lady. Moving on through the cost management. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, so bulk feeling in the middle. Yeah, so like I said, if you do have questions, either at the moment that you already know, or as we get closer, please do share. Again, we want to make sure that we are addressing, the key questions that folks have as we go through that process. Okay, so the second section on this cost management center centers around the cost tools, and we sort of think about the cost tools in kind of two groups. So ultimately, this section is about is about demystifying the cloud and helping you access information about your cloud consumption. And like I said, we sort of do this in two ways. There are the custom tools that CMS has built, like the cost estimation tool and the estimated completion 2.0 dashboard. And these are specifically built to provide guidance in both estimating cloud costs and tracking current spend. And then there are the CSP native tools for AWS and MAG. And this is about, information that the CSPs provide themselves to better manage their respective cloud offerings. And so, we want to make sure we've got resources available to you all across the spectrum. So, for example, hopefully you are already an avid user of the cost estimation tool and the EAC tool. If you're not, this is where you can come in and get that introduction to what these tools offer and how they can be leveraged as part of being a good active steward of your cloud environments. Estimated completion, like I said, is focused on kind of tracking current spending and how that is comparing to your overall budget. It is currently available to BOs. If this is something that you would like access to, there is a way to request access that is available here. So please jump in and make sure you do have access to this, because it is a very useful tool to be able to track how your spend is to date. And then, like I mentioned, on the CSP provided side, there are a number of resources for AWS and MAG that are about managing those specific offerings. There's also additional office hour recordings if you want to access those, and documentation here. Sorry, just kind of winding these up a little bit so we can focus. The last two sections then in the cost management center, and this is where we get into some of the new content that's available, but this is really about incorporating best practices, right? So, the first was about sort of the funding process. Then we get into kind of creating transparency around your cloud configuration, and now it's about how do we incorporate those best practices and make good decisions about what our cloud environments need to look like. And so the first is the cloud consumption playbook, and this is generalized industry as well as CMS best practices that can help you make decisions regarding your cloud consumption. And so there's a number of ways that we look at cloud consumption. You can see, compute, storage, database, right? Those are some of the areas that we're sort of starting to provide guidance on here. And this is really just a start. This is one of the areas where we will provide additional information here and give more guidance that allows you to get the full value of the cloud. So I encourage you to come check out this information and start to get a sense of the best practices that the program is recommending overall. And then in terms of incorporating best practices, the last section I wanted to kind of highlight here is around cloud consumption consultations. And this is really where you can get a tailored investigation and tailored guidance working with a subject matter expert specifically for your application. So this is to help you kind of baseline your current consumption, understand areas of opportunity, and ultimately establish how to put these things into action. So if this is something that you're interested in, you can go ahead and request a consultation here that will send you through kind of a service request flow, and you can get connected with the right folks here. Okay, so in terms of the main walkthrough today, again, that was largely what I wanted to cover, to kind of give you a sense of the overall structure of this cost management center and some of the information that you can find here. I'm not going to go through this page by page. I think that would be A, a lot of information, and B, not a terribly exciting and useful session for you all. So we're not going to do that. But hopefully this does provide a little bit of sense of what's now here. So as we kind of come to the end, the last thing I wanted to just basically touch base on was, what to expect in the future, right? So we've launched this center, but what should you expect to see as we continue to work on this resource, excuse me. So one, as we talked about on the contracting side of things, look for communication soon about the repricing process, including that upcoming office hours session. So, we'll look to get you more information about that whole process through those channels. On the cost tool sides of things, CET and EAC continue to add functionality to their tools. Those product teams are very busy at work, so please keep an eye out for feature announcements as we make that new functionality available. And I'll also add here, we're always looking for feedback and would be happy to chat. So if you are a user of CET or EAC, or both, ideally, we would love to hear from you and get a sense of how we can improve those tools. And then lastly, on the incorporating best practices part, so the playbook and the consultations, again, we're continuing to develop additional playbooks, and you'll see additional sort of guidelines that we will publish here to help you implement best practices. So with that, we've got our kind of closing poll question before we take any questions or things like that. So Yulady, I'll hand it over to you one more time for that.
Thank you, David. I just launched the second poll question for today. And we would like to know in which areas should we build more content, contracting, cost tools, or incorporating best practices? I will give you a little bit to answer. You can see most people has answered already. I will add another 5 seconds for you to use this opportunity to answer our poll. So here are the results, David. Best practices on contracting, I would say.
All right, I don't think we can see those quite yet if you want to share those. Oh, there they are on my other screen, sorry. Okay, so contracting, incorporating best practices, great. That's super helpful feedback.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Allison, I think I'm kicking it back to you for questions, is that right?
Yes, you are. I'll share my screen now. And I'll see if we have any questions in the chat. All right. So I don't see any questions in the chat. We do have a couple of members of the CMS Cloud team here who are available to give us some more context on cost consumption tools. David, do you have any topics that you'd like to highlight?
In regards to the cloud tools themselves specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, you've caught me a little bit off guard. I have to admit here. So
I've always got the zingers ready.
Apparently, no, I think through the repricing process, right? As we get into the new option year, I think just reemphasizing the role that CET can play there in helping teams kind of estimate out their cloud consumption. So I would say if you're not familiar with CET, it's open to everybody, and it definitely can be a resource for you.
Okay. Chetan asked, any best practices on how to control cost of Kubernetes-based EKS?
Let's see. So do we have, this might be a question. Some of these deeper technical questions might be good ones that we'll follow up with folks afterwards. I will say I cannot speak to that question specifically. I'm looking through the participant list to see if there's anyone who might be able to field that. But maybe we just take a note of that question and follow up with folks async and get back to Chetan.
Definitely. Let's see. Here's another one. Is CPT replacing the spreadsheet GDIT/AWS has been using? Can the spreadsheet be uploaded in CPT?
For folks, I think I see a few names from CPT. If anybody wants to jump in and take that question.
I'll jump in there quick. So if it's the question is if the EAC replacing the spreadsheet, and yes and no. I mean, so CPT still generates an EAC spreadsheet that feeds into the EAC 2.0 tool. So all the goodness that comes out of that spreadsheet is in that EAC 2.0 tool. But the CPT team will continue to be constructing and providing that spreadsheet as necessary as the EAC 2.0 tool continues to evolve. Hopefully that answered your question, Ed.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming through. So I think it's a good time to close. And
real quick, this is Ed Custer. Sorry, I was on mute, double muted. I just want to follow up. So on my question about the spreadsheet. So every year so I've been providing a spreadsheet. Now, it hasn't always been used by the core for, it seemed like, for estimating purposes, but we've been providing it. And I've got my app team updating it again, just making sure it's current to provide to the core. And then we were getting this, you need this, use this new cost management, or use some new tool or something, this cost management center or whatever. So I was just, do you take all the information that's on the spreadsheet? Are there like fields where you just go into?
Oh yeah, so I think you're asking about the CET tool. So yeah, so I mean, historically, you're absolutely correct. Historically, we have had that fairly long Excel file that folks would put in the particulars of their environment, and we could take that and then run a ROM for applications on how much funding to associate with their cloud environment. We are migrating that activity, instead of doing it in that lengthy Excel file. The CET tool itself, it kind of is a faster tool to use to doing estimating. And so, yeah, so you can take that existing Excel file and somebody from your team, and also the CPT team, would be happy to help with this, to kind of put that into the CET tool for you to kind of generate a ROM. And that would be then leveraged, then that would be leveraged for your option year 2 repricing exercise that's about to kick off.
Okay, so if having the information in the spreadsheet will make it easier to enter. And there's a spot we can just enter it into the CET.
That's correct, sir. And we'd be happy to get with you and your team to provide some training and some knowledge on how to use that tool.
Okay, I'm with the IDM team.
Got it.
It's our cloud navigator.
All
right,
we'll
that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Yep, we'll reach out.
And this
Thank
is
you.
Matt, I would like to add, and that's why we have a new feature in CET that you can actually create that first estimate from your current existing application, and you can start from that to create an estimate within CET. So that
to highlight what I was just talking about, which is a really cool feature that they just rolled out, is within CET, they can ingest your current tech stack. So what you're currently running in your environments, it gets sucked into the tool and it lays it out for you. And then you can make adjustments to that if you want to, or it could functionally, it provides you an estimate for what you're currently running. It's a very powerful tool that they just rolled out.
Okay, it would be nice. Yeah, maybe it'd be nice to have a session sometime where I
Sure.
can get the folks in my
We'll reach out to you.
contact
Ed,
everything
and-
and-
Yep, to the IDM team and yourself.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Edward. That was a great question. Just want to check if there are any last minute burning questions in the audience. Okay, hearing none, we'll close. I want to thank everyone for attending today. And I want to remind you to reach out to us to share your ideas and feedback through cloud training at cms.hhs.gov. Additionally, you can sign up for Gov delivery notices to receive future office hours dates. You can visit us on cloud.cms.gov to learn about our upcoming topics. Join us in March, on March 3rd, for an introduction to CMS Cloud office hours. Until next time, thank you guys very much, and see you in March. Bye, everyone.